I have spent 40 years of my life listening, and I want to be precise about what that means, because the imprecise version is the one that has been spreading through the lower decks, and I will not have it follow me into the record. To listen among my people is not what it is among theirs. We are the Severny. From the hour we are decanted, we are joined to the lattice, the low constant carrier that runs beneath everything we are, and through it we are never alone and never silent. A Severny child does not learn to speak the way a human child does, in fits and cries, alone in its own skull until the words arrive. A Severny child wakes already inside the chorus. The carrier is there before thought. We coordinate the way a single body coordinates its own hands, not by sending orders from one part to another, but by being, at root, one thing distributed across many. When 10,000 of us move a freight spine into dock, no one calls the count. The count is simply known because we are all standing inside the same low hum, and the hum carries the shape of the work. I tell you this so you understand why I was confident. I had cause to be. I was signals master of the listening and holding station we called the coil, and in the matter of finding what passed between two minds, I had never once failed. I had pulled the buried channels out of 17 species. I had found the scent codes the HFY lay down in still air, the pressure clicks the deepwater alu use through a hull, the modulated body heat the Thren mistake for privacy. Every thinking thing that has ever tried to coordinate against us has done so across some channel, because coordination requires a channel. This is not opinion. It is the first axiom of my discipline, the thing they teach you before they let you touch the gallery boards. Two minds that act as one are two minds joined by a line. Find the line and you own them both. So when the coil took the two humans, I was not afraid. I was interested. The take itself was unremarkable. A salvage tug, old and patched, drifting through a reach we had closed to traffic. The interdiction wing brought it in clean, no damage, no resistance worth the name. The tug carried a crew of two, both human. Both, as it happened, female, which mattered to none of us at the time and matters to the account only because the lower decks have since made a small superstition of it, and I want that superstition dead. There was nothing special in their sex. There was something special in the two of them, and it had nothing to do with that. I watched the take from the gallery. The intake feed showed them being walked out of the tug's lock by a security file, 6 of ours, in the full carapace, weapons grounded but ready. The two humans did not struggle. They did not plead. The taller one said something to the shorter one, low, a handful of words I had the linguists pull later, she said, same as the Bishai job. The shorter one made a sound the linguists called a laugh, though it was a tired one, and answered, worse parking. That was all. Then they let themselves be walked apart, into the two intake corridors that branched toward the two holding blocks, and they went without looking back at each other. I noted that. I wanted on the record that I noted it from the first hour. They did not look back. Among any joined people, the moment of separation is the moment the channel strains, the Thren flush with heat, the alu's clicks come faster, the HFY leave a thick smear of scent at the dividing line, all of them reaching to hold the line open across the new distance. The humans did nothing. They were divided into two sealed blocks, 400 meters of hull and shielding between them, and they walked into that division as calmly as a Severny walks into a room full of his own kin. I assumed I knew what that meant. I assumed it meant their channel was robust, so well established, so deeply buried that the separation did not trouble it. That made it a richer prize, not a poorer one. I told the security overseer, a thorough officer named Sale Caro, that I would have their channel mapped within 2 of their days, and that until I did, he was to leave them sealed and unspoken to, so that nothing I caught between them would be contaminated by anything we put in. He agreed. He was a careful animal. He did everything right. I want that on the record too, because what happened to the coil was not Sale Caro's failure, and it was not, in the end, mine. It was the simple fact of what those two creatures were, and the simpler fact that my entire discipline had no axiom that fit them. The two holding blocks of the coil were the best sealed environments my people had ever built, and we built them specifically to defeat the thing I am about to fail to defeat. Each cell was a shell within a shell. The inner shell held the prisoner. The outer shell held nothing but instruments, mine. Between the shells ran the full breadth of the listening art. Broadband antennae tuned from the deep slow waves up through the fast bright ones, pressure plates in the floor, and walls fine enough to read a held breath, thermal lattices that mapped the heat coming off a body to a tenth of a degree, optical arrays that missed nothing in the visible and nothing in the dark beyond it. We could read the chemistry of the air a prisoner exhaled. We could read the salt they sweated. If a prisoner so much as shifted their weight in a pattern, we would catch the pattern, and if the pattern repeated in the other block, we would have the channel. I put my two best gallery officers on the two blocks, and I took the third seat myself, the seat that watched both feeds at once and looked for the thing that appeared in both. That was the whole of the art, reduced to its bones. Find the thing that appears in both. A signal is only a signal because it is sent from one place and received in another, which means it exists, however faintly, in two places at once. Find the echo. I had been finding the echo my whole life. The first day I found nothing, and I was not concerned. Nothing is what the first day usually gives you. Buried channels are buried. You do not pull them up in an hour. The taller human Hale, the manifest from the tug, called her. A recovery contractor of some years' standing, sat in her cell and did very little. She mapped the cell first, walked its edges, touched its walls, found its seams. Every prisoner does this. Then she settled against the wall that, had she known it, was the wall nearest her partner's block, though she could not have known it, because the corridors twist on the way in precisely so that no prisoner can hold a bearing on the other. She settled against that wall, and she closed her eyes and she rested. Her heart slowed. Her breathing lengthened. My thermal lattice watched her cool toward sleep and then hold just short of it, in that shallow waking rest the long-traveled learn to take. The shorter human rays, the tug's engineer of record, did almost the opposite. She did not rest. She worked the cell. She studied the lighting and the vents and the door and the floor, slow and patient, the way I have seen our own engineers study a failing system, looking not for the weakness they want but for the weakness that is there. She found the cell's small honesties, the place the floor plate flexed a hair under load, the vent grill whose fasteners had been set by a tired hand, the door seam that ran a half-degree warmer than its mate because the actuator behind it ran hot. She found these, and she did not act on any of them. She catalogued them. Then she sat down with her back to the wall, the same wall, I noted, the wall nearest Hale's block, though rays had come in by the other twisting corridor and had no way to know which wall that was, and she rested too. That was the first thing I could not explain, and I made myself not be troubled by it. Both of them, in cells whose orientation they could not know, had chosen to rest against the one wall that faced the other. I told myself it was chance. There are only so many walls. 2 prisoners, 4 walls each. The odds of a match are not long. I told myself that, and I went on listening for the channel, because the wall was not a channel. A shared instinct to sit facing where the other might be is not a transmission. It carries no information. It cannot be jammed because there is nothing in it to jam. I noted it and I set it aside, and I am telling you now that setting it aside was the first of my errors, though it would be days before I understood why. The second day I found nothing, and I began, for the first time in my career, to be concerned. Understand the shape of my concern. It was not that the channel was well hidden. I had handled well-hidden channels. It was that the harder I looked, the more clearly I could see that there was nothing to hide. A buried channel still leaves its grammar in the noise. Even a species that thinks it has no channel, the Thren, who genuinely believe their heat flushes are private and involuntary, even they leave the grammar. You find the moments where the flush is too well timed to be involuntary, the moments where the heat answers a question, and from those moments you reconstruct the line. I looked for the moments where the humans' behavior answered each other, and I could not find the moments, because their behavior did not, in any rhythm I could catch, answer each other at all. They simply rested. They breathed. They woke and moved and rested again, and the two patterns ran alongside one another like two rivers that never met, and I could not make them meet. On the third day they escaped, and I want to set down exactly what I saw, in the order I saw it, because the order is the whole of the horror. It began in Ray's block. The engineer woke from her rest. I have the thermal record, her body warming from the rest state, the slow climb of a creature surfacing, and she rose, and she went to the vent grill she had catalogued on the first day, the one whose fasteners a tired hand had set, and she began, without hurry, to work it loose. She had nothing to work with but her hands and a strip of metal she had bent free from the rest shelf, and yet she worked the grill with the economy of someone who had already decided on the first day that this was the way, and had spent 2 days letting us watch her not do it. I have thought a great deal about those 2 days of not doing it. I think now they were not patience. I think they were arithmetic. I think she was waiting for a number she could not see and I could not see, and when the number came due she rose and moved. Here is the part I cannot make my own people understand, because my own people have never been alone inside their own skulls and so have no instinct for what I am about to describe. At the moment Ray's rose in her block and went to her vent, Hale rose in her block, 400 meters away, through hull and shielding and the full breadth of my listening art, and went to her door. Not her vent, her door. The two of them did different things. That is the part. If they had done the same thing at the same time, I would have had my channel, a shared trigger, a synchronized cue, the echo I had spent 3 days hunting. Instead, they did different and complementary things at the same moment, the way your two hands do different and complementary things when you tie a knot, and there was no cue between them, because I was watching every band on which a cue could ride and there was no cue. Ray's opened the vent and went into the service space behind it, a crawl of conduit and coolant line that our designers had left, because every sealed thing must be served, and the serving leaves a seam. She moved through it toward the block's atmosphere plant. Hale, meanwhile, stood at her door and did a thing I did not understand until it was far too late. She began to bleed heat, deliberately. She set her body against the warm door seam, the one whose actuator ran hot, and she pressed her own warmth into it, and she breathed against it, fogging it, and she did this steadily for a long while, and my thermal lattice, my beautiful, fine, expensive thermal lattice, dutifully reported a rising thermal anomaly at the door of Hale's cell, and my gallery officer on that block did exactly what he was trained to do, which was flag the anomaly and root attention to it. Because a prisoner heating a door is a prisoner trying the door, and a prisoner trying the door is the thing the whole block is built to catch. So we caught it. We caught Hale at her door, throwing heat, and the block's attention turned to her, the way a body's attention turns to the hand that is burned. And while the block looked at Hale's hot door, Ray's in the cold crawl space, the block had stopped watching, because the block, like all sealed things, could only fully watch where it was looking, reach the atmosphere plant, and did to it the quiet, surgical thing she had spent 2 days deciding to do. She did not break it. Breaking it would have screamed. She tuned it. She reached into the scrubber cycle and she shifted it, a small shift, the kind of shift a tired engineer might make and not notice, and the block's air began very slowly to go wrong. Not poisonous, not fast. Just wrong, in the particular way that makes a Severnese lattice thin and swim. Because our carrier, our beautiful constant carrier, the hum we live inside, is carried in part by the medium we breathe. And when the medium goes wrong, the carrier goes wrong. And a Severnese whose carrier is swimming is a Severnese who, for the first time since he was decanted, begins to feel alone. I felt it in the gallery. I want to be honest about that. I felt the carrier thin, and I felt the thing underneath the carrier that I had not felt since I was a child, and the lattice had once. For a flickering instant during a power fault, dropped. The thing my people do not have a clean word for because we do not, as a rule, ever feel it. I will use the human word because the humans have a clean word for it, because the humans feel it all the time and have had to name it. I felt alone. And my gallery officers felt it, and the security file in Ray's block felt it. and across the whole of that block, the Severny who were meant to be holding the line against two unarmed prisoners felt, all at once, the floor of their cells go soft, and they did the thing a drowning man does, which is reach for the surface. They reached for the lattice hard, all of them at once, flooding the carrier with their own reaching, which is the worst possible thing to do, because now the carrier was not only thin but loud. A babble of frightened reaching, and no order could move through it cleanly. And the block's coordination, our coordination, the thing we had over them, the thing that made 10,000 of us move as one, came apart into 10,000 frightened individuals, each reaching for a surface that was not there. And in the middle of that, calm as the dead, the two humans worked. I had both feeds. I want you to know I had both feeds and full instrumentation and 40 years of the art. And I sat in my seat and I watched them and I could not find the channel because, and here at last is the thing, the whole thing, the thing I have come 400 meters in 3 days and 40 years to tell you, there was no channel. There had never been a channel. They were not coordinating across a line. They were not signaling. Reyes did not tell Hale to throw heat at the door, and Hale did not tell Reyes that the air plant was clear. Neither of them sent the other anything at all. What they had instead was older and lower and entirely beneath my art, and it was this. Each of them carried, inside her own single isolated skull, a model of the other so complete and so worn in that she did not need to be told. Hale threw heat at the door because Hale knew, the way you know your own next breath, that Reyes was in the crawl space and that the block's attention had to be pulled to the wrong place. And Reyes worked the air plant because Reyes knew, the same way, that Hale would buy her the looking elsewhere, and would buy it at exactly the door, at exactly the moment, in exactly the way that would draw exactly the attention Reyes needed drawn. They had built these models of each other over years, 11 years. I learned later, 11 of their years working in the cramped two-person dark of a salvage tug, until each had run the other's mind so many times that the other's mind ran inside her own. They were not two minds joined by a line. They were two minds that had each grown a copy of the other and could consult the copy in perfect silence, with nothing passing between the originals at all. You cannot jam that. I need my people to hear this, and I need them to stop reaching for a way around it. You cannot jam a signal that is not sent. You cannot intercept a message that lives entirely inside two separate skulls and never crosses the space between them. You cannot predict the next move by analyzing the channel, because there is no channel to analyze. The prediction is happening inside each human, privately, off any line my art can touch. Every defense my people have ever built, every sealed cell and listening gallery and interdiction hold, every one of them is built on the first axiom. Two minds that act as one are two minds joined by a line. Find the line and you own them both. The humans had quietly repealed the axiom. They acted as one and there was no line. They had taken the loneliness that is their birthright, that terrible aloneness inside the single skull that I felt for the first time when Reyes thinned the air, and that a human feels from the hour it is born. And they had made it into a weapon by the simple, patient, unbearable work of learning another person so well that the aloneness no longer mattered. I should describe the rest, for the record, though the rest is only the consequence. Reyes came out of the crawl space into a block that had stopped functioning as a block and had become a great many frightened individuals. She did not need to fight them. A Severny whose carrier is swimming does not fight. He stands very still and reaches for a surface, and a still Severny is no obstacle to a calm human walking through him toward a door. She walked through them. She reached the block's lock and she opened it. Not with violence, with the same patient surgery, the seams again, the tired hand fasteners again, and she went out into the connecting spine, and there, coming the other way, was Hale. Hale, whose block I had watched the whole time. Hale, who had thrown heat at her door and pulled her block's attention, and who had then, while that attention was spent, done to her own block's air plant the very same quiet thing. Because of course she had, because the model of Reyes inside Hale's skull had told her that Reyes was, at that moment, doing the same to hers. And so Hale did it too, in perfect parallel with no word between them, and her block had come apart into the same frightened babble as Ray's, and Hale had walked out of it the same way. They had run the identical operation in two sealed blocks 400 meters apart, each performing both halves of a plan that neither had spoken, each trusting the other to perform the matching half, and they had been right, both of them completely, the first time, with no rehearsal and no channel and no chance to correct an error, because there were no errors, because the models were that good. They met in the spine, I have the feed. They did not embrace. They did not speak more than they had to. Hale said, "Clean," and Ray said, "Clean," and that was the entire content of their reunion, one word each, the only two words that crossed the space between them in the whole of the escape, and even those two words were not coordination, they were only confirmation of a coordination already complete. They went to the interdiction wing together, two calm women walking through a station that had forgotten how to be one thing, and they took back their tug, and the wing, full of Severny reaching for a surface, did not stop them, because a station that cannot coordinate cannot stop anyone, and we are a station that has never, in all our history, had to coordinate without the lattice, and so we did not know how. They were gone before the air plants were corrected. By the time my people's carrier came clear, and the babble settled, and 10,000 Severny remembered how to be one thing, the tug was a cold mark on the long-range board, accelerating away through the reach we had closed, and the two of them were inside it, and I sat in my seat in the gallery with both feeds still running on the two empty cells, and I understood fully what I was looking at. Sale Caro, the security overseer, came to the gallery after. He was a careful animal and he did not rage. He asked me, simply, where I had lost the channel, so that we could close the gap before the next take. I had to tell him the truth, and the truth was the worst thing I have ever had to put into the carrier, because the carrier carries it to everyone at once, and I could not soften it for the lower decks before it reached them. I told him there was no channel. I told him there had never been a channel. I told him that the two humans had not been joined by any line, and that the gap he wanted to close was not a gap in the cell or in the seals or in my instruments, but a gap in the first axiom of my entire discipline, and that the gap could not be closed, because the humans had not crossed it. They had simply never needed it. I told him that they had each carried the other inside their own skull, perfectly, privately, and had acted as one without a single thing passing between them, and that I had no instrument that could find a thing that is never sent, and that I did not believe such an instrument could be built, because you cannot listen for silence, and you cannot jam an absence, and you cannot intercept a message that is, at every moment, already arrived. He was quiet for a long while. The carrier between us was very clean by then, the air corrected, the hum steady, and I remember being grateful for it in a way I had never been grateful for it before, the way you are grateful for a thing only after you have, for an hour, been without it. Then he asked the question the lower decks have been asking ever since, the question that has become the superstition I want killed. He asked whether it was the two of them being female that did it, some quirk of their kind, some pair bond their males do not have. I told him no. I told him it was not their sex, and it was not luck, and it was not any quirk we could quarantine and feel safe from. I told him it was the thing every human carries and we do not. The single skull, the birthright loneliness, the lifetime spent alone behind the eyes, and the patient, unbearable answer they have found to it, which is to spend years learning one other person so completely that the loneliness becomes a place to hide a weapon. Any two of them can do it. They do it on purpose. They do it for love. Even 11 years in a salvage tug is not a posting. It is a marriage of some kind, the kind that builds the model so deep that the two of them stopped being catchable somewhere around the 8th year and never thought to mention it, because to them it is not a weapon. It is only how you work with someone you trust. That is the thing I need on the record. And I need it to stop being a story about two women and a thinned atmosphere and a clever escape, and start being the thing it actually is, which is a warning my whole discipline cannot answer. We built our greatness on the channel. Every advantage we have ever held over every species we have ever faced has come from the same root. They coordinate across a line, and we are masters of the line. We find it, we read it, we break it, we turn it. We have never once in our history faced an enemy who coordinates without one, because no species we ever met was lonely enough to have learned how. The humans are that lonely. They are born into the dark behind their own eyes, and they live their whole lives there. Alone in a way no Severny has ever been alone for more than the flickering instant of a power fault. And that aloneness, which should have made them weak, which should have made them uncoordinatable, easy, a single skull each and no chorus to join, that aloneness is precisely the forge. Because a thing that is alone learns, if it is patient and if it loves something, to build the chorus inside itself. And a chorus inside the skull sends nothing across the space between, and so there is nothing to find. And so my art is blind to them completely. And so are all the arts of all my people, and so is the coil, and so is every hold and gallery and sealed cell we have ever built or will ever build. I have replayed the feeds a great many times. I always stop at the same place, not the escape is only the proof. I stop at the first day, at the two of them in their two cells, choosing without knowing it the same wall, the wall that faced the other and resting against it. I told myself then it was chance. It was not chance. It was the model, already running, already complete, each of them resting against the place where she knew the other was, not because any signal told her, but because she carried the other so completely that she could feel where she would be. There was no information in it. There was nothing to jam. There was only two creatures who had each, long ago, learned the other by heart, sitting back to back through 400 meters of hull, alone, together, perfectly, and waiting for a number only they could count. We will not take humans in pairs again. That is the only defense I have been able to offer, and it is not a defense, it is a retreat. The order has gone out through the carrier to every hold. Do not hold two humans who know each other. Hold one or hold strangers, but never two who have shared the dark. I signed the order myself. I am not proud of it. It is the first time in the history of my discipline that we have answered an enemy's coordination not by breaking it, but by refusing to be in the room with it. And I knew as I signed it, that it will not hold, because the humans do not need us to take them in pairs. They will arrive in pairs when they want to. And there will be nothing on any band to warn us, and nothing in any cell to stop them. And the first I will know of it is the carrier going thin, and the floor of myself going soft, and that old, buried human word surfacing in a Severny mind that was never built to hold it. The taller one, Hale, said one more thing near the end, that the optical array caught and the linguists rendered for me, though the humans did not know they were being heard and certainly did not say it for us. As they reached the tug, Ray's tired, the long catalog finally spent, said something low about how she'd cut the air plant timing too close, that she'd nearly waited too long. And Hale, walking ahead of her into the lock, not even turning around, said, "You didn't. I knew you wouldn't. I knew you wouldn't." There is no instrument in my gallery that can find the place where that knowing lives. I have looked. It is not on any band. It is not in the air or the heat or the salt or the pattern of a shifted weight. It is inside her, where she keeps the other one, where they each keep the other one, in the one place my whole long life of listening has never once been able to reach, the dark behind a single pair of human eyes where they are never, it turns out, as alone as we believed. I am Oru Vithari, Signals Master of the Coil, and I have spent 40 years finding the line between two minds. I am filing this because someone must, and because the carrier should hold it after I am gone. There are two minds in the universe that act as one across any distance you can build, and there is no line between them, and there never was, and that is not a thing you defeat. That is a thing you learn to live near, the way you learn to live near a star that will, one day, on its own schedule, decide to end you. We will live near them as long as we can, and we will not, I think, ever take two of them again.